to this public feedback meeting. It's the 5th of November, it's 11 o'clock, and we're very happy that you are with us today. Unusual times, but probably your 365th Zoom meeting for the year. So this is probably how we're going to conduct most of our business over the next while. But I'm delighted to see you online with us, and welcome. We are going to be engaging with you a little bit about the work that we do in a very brief and succinct format. And so I'd like to welcome you into this room with Community Chest and our board this morning to engage in our public feedback engagement. It is my pleasure this morning to introduce the chairperson of Community Chest, Ms. Charlene Duncan, who heads our board, to welcome you into the space this morning. And I also have online our other board members, Mr. Alan Hulson, who is the head of our Finance Committee, Ms. Carol Fleers-Goddard, who is our former chairperson and also the acting head of our Audit Committee, Mr. Mike Buzaza, who is online with us, Mr. Michael Cornelis, Mr. Edgar Adams, who is all here with us, and I'm pleased to say to them that it's been a great honor and pleasure to serve with you this year. Ms. Shirley Zinn has also been on our board for most of this year, Mr. Edgar Adams, and several others. So I'm going to immediately start this meeting by handing over to our board chairperson, Ms. Charlene Duncan, and she is going to welcome you into this conversation this morning.
Thank you very much, Lorenzo, and a very good morning to all of you, to my fellow board members, as well as all of you who are participating in our public feedback meeting via Zoom. As Lorenzo said, I think by now we're pretty much all zoomed out, and I really want to extend a big thank you to everybody who's made the time to be part of us, share with us in our feedback meeting this morning. It's a great honor and a privilege to have you here. We do miss the interaction. We do miss seeing all of you and being able to engage in a meaningful way like we normally do at the Chest. But we will navigate our way through this morning, and a very warm welcome to all of you who's made the time to engage with us, and we look forward to an exciting morning. We will be looking at what Community Chest has been involved with, and for you to interact with us and to give us some of your thoughts. So very big welcome, and Lorenzo, back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlene. Thank you for the welcome. So we're going to get right into our meeting this morning. I want to read out the notice of this meeting, which is our public feedback meeting hosted on the 5th of November 2020. And we're going to be together from 11 to around 12 o'clock. We probably are not going to endure a 1.5 hour Zoom meeting, but welcome to this meeting today as the public feedback engagement. And I'd be very happy to engage with you. Your questions, if you have questions, post them in the chat box as we normally do, or send them to us. Even if you send us an email, we'll pick up the email very quickly and just stay in touch with you through this meeting. I want to just notice the apologies that are there for today. We have Dr. Shirley Zinn, who unfortunately has another engagement and can't be with us this morning. And so we want to get through that and make sure that you can journey through our dialogue very quickly this morning. I'm now going to just quickly review the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held at the Center for the Book last year on the 9th of October 2019. And the minutes are on the screen for you to see. Quick overview of that minute, if you were there and you remember some of our discussions. We spoke about the Mpumalelo Social Innovations organization that merged with Community Chest in August 2018, and some of the engagements that we did with them. We spoke about the after-school Game Changer program we are doing with the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport in the Western Cape, and the work that is engaged in that particular space. We spoke about stuff like the Mandela Book Day Mountain, and we spoke about Johnson & Johnson and related matters. I'm not going to delay that too much, but those are just some of the matters. Then there was the chairman's report was read out last year, and it was accepted by Stacey Dawley-Jones and seconded by Mr. Michael Buzaza. Then the CEO's report, as I just referred to, was highlighted, and the CEO's report was also accepted and presented by myself. And then the board members that were appointed for that period was Ms. Carol Freers-Goddard, Ms. Charlene Duncan, Mr. Michael Bezaza, Mr. Michael Blomkamp, up until August 2018. Then we said a very sad farewell to the late Herbert Hirsch and awarded him a certificate in memoriam to his son, Dr. Alan Hirsch, Professor Alan Hirsch, and then Mr. Jerome Levendahl, who also resigned during that period, Mr. Meka Magida, who resigned during that period, and Mr. Edgar Adams, Mr. Grant Gunston, Dr. Zinn, Mr. Alan Wilson, and Mr. Darius will agreed to continue serving on that particular board. Then we had some questions, but we were open for some questions. There was none asked. And then we closed the meeting at 12:15. Those were the minutes of the previous meeting, and I'm going to ask if there's anybody who wants to second that minute for approval. I would welcome that now so that we can have a record of that. Ms. Carol Freers-Goddard is indicating that she's accepting the minute. Is there a seconder for that? If you just switch your microphone on, then I can hear you that you are seconding.
Yes, I'll second that, Lorenzo.
Thank you, Alan. Mr. Alan Wolfson has seconded the minute as it is presented. Thank you very much. We're moving on. The next item on our agenda this morning is the chairperson's report that will be presented by Charlene Duncan. She is the Director for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at UWC, and it's a great honor to have her present her report to us this morning. Thank you, Charlene. I will put the report on the screen as she speaks.
Thank you very much, Lorenzo. And again, once again, if I missed anybody earlier on when I did the welcome, a very good morning and a welcome to all of you who have made the time to attend and participate in our public feedback meeting. Dear friends of Community Chest, it gives me great pleasure to present this report as chairperson of Community Chest. Serving this organization with my fellow directors for the past few months has been a challenging and rewarding experience. In many ways, the challenge of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has been not so much to navigate the upheaval it caused in our operating environment, serious as that was, but to maintain focus on our mission and to navigate a course beyond the crisis. What will the post-COVID-19 South Africa look like? A national crisis of this longevity will have a lasting impact on society, particularly in its disruption of healthcare and employment, both of which were already in systematic crisis before 2020. NPOs will play a pivotal role in redeveloping community resources and economic recovery, and not only in terms of their missions. The total donor spend of the non-profit sector is estimated at 101 billion annually. The sector employs hundreds of thousands of people who support millions of South Africans directly and indirectly. Therefore, when we are told that some 12% of the over 235,000 NPOs registered with the Department of Social Development have already permanently closed down, and a further 30% will close down during the first quarter of 2021, our concern as the Community Chest should not only be on the implications for beneficiaries, but also what can we do to slow and ultimately reverse this trend. More than ever, our people simply cannot afford it. The disaster in the making is a consequence of the national lockdown. Overnight, most NPOs were prevented from providing services and programs, except those involved in food programs. Most funders adopted a delay and defer attitude or moved CSI budgets to food aid, social relief programs, and other COVID-19 related services. NPOs were unable to put out funding appeals or campaigns, with both their staff and funders being out of office during lockdown. The entire process of funding has accumulated a 6-month lag, and many non-COVID-19 causes will likely miss out on funding in 2021. The possible imminent lifting of the lockdown will thus have little or no effect on the present funding crisis. To avert further losses, we have to reset our vision to the current reality of the MPO sector. Doom and gloom is unnecessary. This is a positive process. It requires a pragmatic review of the social compact between funders and communities. The deconstructed state of the funding value chain as a result of the pandemic actually presents a seminal opportunity to both reimagine and reform this value chain and revisit current funding models. The key to the reset strategy is flexibility and the ability to repurpose. I want to commend the Community Chest team on its approach to navigating the funding space. The development of the Coalition of the Committed within the 5 Horizons model approach allows for such a strategic reflection as it frames activities and aligns contributions to the targeted development indicators such as the SDGs and the NDP. The thrust of the Horizons Impact Strategy is a sustained resourcing of the hyperlocal service delivery engine as represented by our community-based organizations. This kind of vision and reset is not easy and requires committed staff and leadership with drive, both values that I recognize and I appreciate among the entire staff at Community Chest this year. Your proven ability to shift gears and to ensure continuity and innovative delivery guarantees that the Community Chest will continue to help South Africa achieve the future we all imagine. Our work would not be possible without our loyal donors, our implementing partners, and the many relationships and stakeholder partnerships that we have built over time. The board is enormously grateful to everyone who walks with us on this journey. Thank you for your trust in Community Chest. I have absolute certainty that together we will continue challenging social justice, speaking up for the voiceless, inspiring innovative delivery approaches and models, and bringing hope of renewal to our communities going forward. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present this report.
We'd like to thank Charlene Duncan for a very insightful and well presented report this morning, reflecting on the state of the NGOs and the crisis that we are faced with, but also the hope and certainly the determination of the sector to serve despite this very severe global pandemic we are in. Thank you, Charlene. I'd like to ask for someone to move to accept the chairperson's report. And I also want to note, just before we do that, that all questions will be taken at the end of this Zoom presentation so that we get through the business, and then we'll handle questions on each of these presentations that were made by various board members. Who moves that we accept this report, please?
I'll move to accept it.
Thank you, Mr. Michael Cornelius. Appreciate that. Seconded by?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. We appreciate that very much. So we're going to move on to my report. I have the pleasure of serving on behalf of the board as the CEO of Community Chest. And I'll quickly just reflect on a few thoughts that I have with you over my allocated time slot. Just want to reflect with you on the fact that as I look at the year that we have just completed, I looked at my previous CEO report for 2018 and 2019, and I did ask myself the question: what has changed? What has changed other than the fact that we're in the midst of a global pandemic? We're in 2020, and we're in an unfinished pandemic and an unfinished US election and an unfinished transformation project in South Africa. What has changed? And I asked that question to myself about what is it that I can write about with significant confidence that informs me and civil society of an improved, less vulnerable, less dangerous existence for the poor, for women, for children, for the unemployed in this country, because we do have serious challenges. We are a nation that is at severe risk of not fulfilling our transformation trajectory, not completing that successfully. Our financial year ended, as did most NGOs, with the announcement by the president of a South Africa that is joining the rest of the world in the pandemic lockdown. 26th of March, you would recall that day. For more than 31 million South Africans, however, who live in situations of extreme poverty, that was the start of a journey of unfathomable hardships and crisis. I don't think we can fully comprehend how hard that was for all poor people in this country. In experiences that included escalating inequalities, desperate hunger, growing corruption scandals, brutal violence, and an unashamed self-enrichment crusade by politically connected individuals and families, we began staring into what I call the political abyss, the economic abyss in this country. During COVID-19, as we served our communities, and not just in this province, but across the country, we saw the scenes of very desperate hunger. I thought of showing you all this data, but I think it's best to keep our data because most of it occurs in this year, not in the year I'm reporting on. And so in the 2020-21 year, we're going to show you the full set of data that we have in terms of the work we did during the pandemic. But the message I want to land with you this morning is the message of deep crisis. It's a crisis for NGOs. It's a crisis for civil society. It's also a crisis in terms of what are the credible messages we should be speaking about, giving to poor people at this time. We face more than 2 million people that are now entering the unemployment ranks during the COVID-19 crisis, a government that appears to be fairly much on a self-destruction path. Increased school dropout rates and the stress of a significantly higher cost of living. It is clear that the moral and psychological crisis that we are facing is not going to go away in any hurry. I daily hear the messages from NGOs who are in crisis, staff-wise, financially, in terms of what are the new strategies, what are the new emerging ideas they should be embracing. But there's a massive conversation. And one of the things that I'm particularly concerned about is that this crisis should not allow just a few NGOs to survive, those with resources, those with money, those with the know-how. But that should be a collective solidarity to make sure the sector survives and that we move in unison with each other to build this national consensus about dealing with poverty and dealing with corruption and dealing with the pains of an overburdened third sector, an overburdened civil society group, whilst on the other end of the spectrum, our government partners are flush with corruption, while an NGO sector is starving. The very monies that are supposed to help people is being siphoned off into all kinds of corruption schemes, while the third sector, the NGO sector, is held to such high standards. And donors won't fund them unless they have such high standards, while many close their eyes to the corruption that is happening all around them. That's what I'm concerned about as the head of this particular agency. In repeating my 2018 report, 2019 report, it is into this theater of chaos that South Africa's over 200,000 NGOs step every day to attempt to shift the crime, education, health, and unemployment and food security data into more positive territory. And for many of us, it's a burden too great to bear. This task of ours is fast becoming an unwinnable battle, given the enormous backlogs people have to deal with, coupled with the slow processes that accompany development, the risk-averse nature of funders, and the absence of real intelligent solutions. I don't want to give you a message that things are going to be okay. I want to give you the message that says that unless we talk about it, it's not going to be okay. Unless we focus on this, it's not going to be okay. Unless we determine in unison and in solidarity that we're going to work together to build a better civil society, it's not going to be okay. Far more soul destroying than all of this are the facts that we are losing more money to corruption and theft than what we are investing in helping people to escape from poverty and become functional citizens. The Auditor General tells us that we've lost 60 billion rand to fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And an NGO sector struggles when all they get from corporate South Africa is 8 billion rand and from high net worth South Africa, 11 billion rand. But we waste 60 billion rand on fruitless and wasteful expenditure. You can begin to see how hard the road is that NGOs must walk. Nothing has changed for the better for the poor. I hope that this phrase is repeated in the annual reports of every NGO in this country. Nothing has improved for the better for poor people. The lives of South Africa's more than 31 million poor people continue to be dominated by 5 major themes. There's profound ambiguity about what the truth is. Is there enough money or isn't there enough money? Are the poverty data changing or is it not changing? Is education improving or is it not improving? Are matriculants doing better in school or is it not better in school? Do we have greater food security or don't we have greater food security? So what is the message that we are all aligned to in this process? Because fundamentally, We need to be able to say in our annual reports that yes, we are on a pathway to save the soul of this nation, or no, we are in an unwinnable battle to save the soul of this nation. And there mustn't be an ambiguity about that. So that ambiguity dominates the dialogue. And that's why our developmental outputs are so poor. That's why the landing of messages of hope are so badly received, because on the ground, people are saying, what is the phrase I quote in my report to the board is that nothing has changed for the better for the poor. So which pathway are we on? It's the question we must answer in our annual reports this year. Besides the ambiguity that is there are also the paradoxical experiences that makes the citizenry uncertain about what to believe. The cacophony of voices are not producing sense-making leadership. Instead, the citizens are arrayed in battle lines against each other and not as collaborators in a shared vision to build a great country. The serious risk to our democracy is that these soulless leaders will convince the poor on behalf of the rich and the powerful to turn on each other, and so destroying each other for a foolish dogma instead of working with each other to build a flourishing democracy. Those are some of the threats, is that we are not aligned in solidarity, we are arrayed in opposition. And a vibrant NGO sector cannot afford that. We must again find our alignment in solidarity and not our arraignment in opposition to each other. There are also these contradictions that often dispirit. The stark inequalities of life in South Africa, one of the greatest in the world, continues to make any sense of an equitable life for all an impossible task to achieve. My call to you as our partners in development, as donors who fund us, as civil society who benefit from the services we do, and to government, is to find the solidarity, not the battle lines, is to find the hope, not the fear, is to find the possibilities, not the corruption. These inequities that we talk about lead to complexities that are too burdensome for the vast majority to carry. Our democracy is a deceased body filled with too much sugar for the rich and too little oxygen for the poor. And we must find a balance between building what we call a safe, just, equitable, inclusive, and prosperous democracy for all. That this message is not about the 3 million successful people in this country. It is about the 57 million people who must stand together in a safe country, a prosperous country for all. However, the volatility in our streets are becoming uncontrollable. The 22,000 people that are murdered annually hardly raise an eyebrow anymore. The 8.2 million of South Africa's 20.4 million young people aged 15 to 34 who are not in employment, education, or training of any sort are not core to our budgets and planning anymore. At what point over the last 27 years did we decide that we are comfortable with a murder rate that is this high? At what point did we decide that we're comfortable with an unemployment rate that is this high? At what point did we decide that it's okay for kids to drop out of school when they are in grade 7 or in grade 9 or in grade 4? It is these indicators of our democracy that we should be highly uncomfortable with. At what point did we decide that we'll put our rage aside at the violence and corruption and simply build higher fences to protect ourselves from the coming volatility? Add to that the uncertainty that paralyzes us and the questions of where my next meal will come from, or will I have a job tomorrow, through to will my child be killed in this township, are the daily uncertainties and stresses that the vast numbers of poor people live with. And now also people who live in the suburbs. And it's a story that we must respond to. Our job at Community Chest is to speak about these uncomfortable truths, to lay it in the public domain, so that we build a safe, inclusive, prosperous democracy for all. We are not about a few surviving. We are not about a few wealthy NGOs. We are not about a few wealthy communities. We are not about a few pleasured donors at the expense of thousands of NGOs that cannot get access to funding. We believe in a country of 57 million people, not 2 million successful people. This uncertainty is compounded by the fact that since '94, the poor have been subjected to economic policy shifts, from GEAR to GISA to all the other policy shifts that were there, and nothing fundamentally has brought us significant hope. We must conclude in 2020 that our hope, our firm belief in this democracy is reaffirmed, not in appealing to government to do something, but it is in discovering within our own selves this deep sense of potency that our voices for justice and peace and safety and security will not be stilled because of who funds us, or because of which political party we are aligned to, or which political agenda we serve, or which ideology we believe in, but in the fundamental belief that whether you're black or white, whether you are rich or poor, whether you're young or old, whether you live in the suburbs or the townships, whether you've gone to a good school or to a township school, whether you've gone to a township school that is great or a rich school that is bad, doesn't matter. A single solidarity must be that every citizen matters. That we will seek to defend and build and develop the lives of every single citizen. And build that, understanding that equity requires of us to make sure that those who've been left behind get special access to services to ensure that this country becomes great. As we sit here in 2020, I ask myself again, what do we tell poor people that they haven't heard before? What is it that we can convince the poor to believe that they haven't heard before? Our charitable community chest has stared at these inconvenient truths, and have decided that it will be guided by sense-making intelligence and an unflinching commitment to safety, justice, equity, inclusivity, and prosperity for all. Our charitable deeds should not be used to silence our voices about the stark inequalities, the nauseating violence, and the destructive corruption around us. For if and when we do that, we betray the sufferings of the very people we seek to help with the bread and water we offer them. Over the last year, we've sought to build partnerships with NGOs, government, donors, and civil society to break the stereotypes of voiceless charity, which serves poor people but does not address the exploitative nature of the poverty they suffer. We've spoken out against the blight of high-cost charitable accountability systems, which does nothing to change the intense culture of uncaring, low-impact outcomes. And so I want to close. I'm happy with the results to report. I'm happy to report that the results detailed in this annual report shows that the tide is turning for our work in education. The tide is turning for our work in food security. The tide is turning for how we've positioned the messages that NGOs must carry. As in 2019, we affirm today that our commitment to South Africa and to its people is that we will continue to do the work of building a country that resolves to destroy poverty, neglect, and violence, and will ignite once again the dreams of our great and blessed land in the heart of every child, every woman, every man, and every family. We'll work alongside every South African to help build a safe, just, equitable, inclusive, and prosperous South Africa and a great democracy. And we will always do so humbly, as one of, and with a duty to all. That's what we offer South Africa. That's what we talk about when we do the work we do. Thank you for listening to my report. I now ask that there's a move to accept and second the report, please. If you are speaking, please switch on your mic and then I can hear you. Thank you. Mr. Darius moves that the report be accepted. Is there a seconder?
I'm happy to second it.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. There's Mr. Gunston that has seconded the report. Thank you. We're now going to go over to the financial statements, which Mr. Bazaza is going to do. Mr. Michael Bazaza is on our board, and he is going to present the financials. He's head of the Financial Committee for Community Chest. Thank you, Mr. Bazaza.
Not quite. Thank you, Lorenzo. Good morning. I don't know if anybody can see financials. Are we showing the financials, or am I just going to report on them?
We're showing your summarized report.
Oh, okay. Then I just want to emphasize that, of course, I'm looking in the past. So I'm reporting up to the end of the financial year. So this report covers the combined operations of the Community Chest and the Community Chest Section 18A, and for the year ended the 31st of March 2020. And I want to tell you that the financials were approved by the Board of Directors on the 26th of October this year. Importantly, the financial statements are prepared in accordance with the International Financial Reporting Standards. And so let me get back to the financial results. We were able to raise in excess of 49.9 million rand this year, despite the fact that our income is subject to fluctuation beyond our control. The community chest's primary source of income is reflected in trusts and government special projects. Year on year, we have seen a steady growth in trust income. In 2020, we received 18.3 million, in 2019, 15.7 million. So that's an increase. This is testimony to the positive and enduring reputation of the community chest has developed over its 92-year history. The significant impact of challenging economic conditions and continuous changes in donor folk has resulted in two of our usually stronger and performing income categories, that is partnerships and capacity building program, underperforming during the financial year under review. During the current year, the investment portfolio managed to provide both income to support our operations and growth to offset the effect of inflation on the grants made to beneficiaries. Investment income continues to remain steady in 2020. The fluctuations in the financial and equity markets have significantly impacted Community Chest's income statement. Community Chest experienced a loss in fair value of 8.4 million in 2020, while in 2019 we had a gain, a small gain, 356,000, but again, this year it has been a loss. Direct expenditure for the reporting period is 13.3 million. Last year it was 10.4 million. Administrative overheads, 15.8 million. Last year they were 14.6 million, so they're both slight increases. Community investment for the period is 35.9 million. It was 37.2 million last year. And so we end up with a net deficit for the year of 23.5 million. Even though we end the year with a deficit, the directors are happy to declare that the Community Chest has adequate resources to operate for the foreseeable future, and we will remain a viable going concern for the next 12 months from the date of approving and signing of the audited annual financial statements. It is important that people understand the Community Chest has a strong balance sheet, as indicated by the investments held for the period, 45.4 million. The Community Chest can adequately meet its current liabilities and non-current liabilities. There's no question of that, even though there was a deficit. We have a strong balance sheet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Any
Bezaza. Yeah, we'll come to the questions shortly. Thank you for that. Also want to point out that our investment, as Mr. Bezaza stated, our investment in community monies we invested in NGOs, in civil society, in bursaries, in food security, in relief of anti-violence programs and related projects this year, in the year under review, totaled 35.9 million. So the monies invested by Community Chest into NGOs, our social partners, civil society, totaled 35.9 million. Slightly down from the previous year, but those fluctuations are more timing based because just prior to the lockdown crisis, a lot of our funding was diverted to the post-lockdown period when we became aware of COVID-19. So thank you, Mr. Bezaza, for that. Can I have somebody that will move that we accept the report, please?
Carol, I move that we accept the report.
Thank you, Ms. Fleers-Goddard, and seconded by?
I'm happy to second that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Duddies. We appreciate that. We're now going to move on to the reappointment of our legal representatives and our auditors. I just want to point out that we are in a discussion. There's an ongoing discussion with the board at the moment about both our legal representatives and our auditors. For now, we have a 5-year contract with our auditors, Ernst & Young, and it's not up for review. So we are not making a decision on that at this point. The board is in a discussion at the moment about whether that matter will stand as it is. But for now, our auditors are Ernst & Young, and our legal representative, Cliff Decker-Hofmeyer, is also currently in a discussion with, we are in a discussion at board level about retaining the services of CDH as well. So these matters are both under review by the board at the moment and will be decided before the end of November. There is a meeting coming up in which the board will discuss these matters. I want to then go on to the confirmation of the office bearers. Our board consists of the following members, headed by Ms. Charlene Duncan, Mr. Mike Bazaza, who is the Vice Chairman, Mr. Edgar Adams, who is currently our longest serving board member and a real stalwart of the board, Mr. Michael Cornelius, who comes from the Science and Maths School in Constantia and has added significant value to the board over the years, Ms. Carol Fleers Goddard, who is also a long-serving board member. Ms. Goddard, just for the sake of interest, is the first person in this country who became a female IT specialist in the 60s. I mean, none of you knew the name of that thing on your desk this morning. She knew computers in and out, and she designed the first system for the medical aid industry in the late 1960s and early 70s. So she is a stalwart in the IT industry. Mr. Alan Wolfson, retired from Liberty Life, who's been on our board as the significant voice of reason in the room. He brings deep intelligence into our discussions. Dr. Shelley Zinn, who's always a pleasure to work with, straight down the line, honest, insightful, and certainly gives us loads of value to consider as she heads up the HR portfolio on the board. Mr. Grant Gunston, who's an attorney with Gunston Strandvik Incorporated, and one of the most human of human beings that you will meet, and certainly somebody who carries the moral and ethical nature of development deep in his soul. Mr. Colin Durries, who is a businessman, came through the ranks of hard work, built up a significant portfolio of business, and has served the community through institutions like WEGPOF and others, very interested and keen on small business development. Very happy to have him with us as well. Mr. Mike Bazaza is retired. He enjoys walking his dogs and is a philanthropist of note. He is a significant voice in the donor community. And then our chair, Ms. Charlene Duncan, who heads up the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at UWC, is an academic, recently achieved a master's degree, and has led the board over the last 12 months with significant success. These are our board members. I serve at their pleasure, and I've been honored to have a wonderful team of deep, thoughtful, considerate South African leaders around me to advise and also rebuke from time to time, so that the work of Community Chest is always strong and steadfast. I commend these members to you as our board for the next reporting period. Thank you very much. I'm now going to take any questions that we may have. I am just going to exit the full screen so that I can pick up if there are any questions that anybody may have. I'm not certain that I have any questions, but if you do have, would you please so indicate so that I can pick that up. My team is watching if there are any questions. And I'm going to just pause for a moment if anybody's still busy typing. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. Because I'm doing full screen, can I see how many people are online? There's about 65 people online. I can't see it because I have a particular format of Zoom, which they've asked me to use for this meeting. So, there being no further questions, the time is now 11:38, and I want to see just... Yes, there is a question. Can I get the question, please? Because I can't see it. Charlene has said there's a question.
There's a question from Wendy, and the question is, when is the next call for proposals for funding?
Thank you, Wendy. Sorry, I'm just getting feedback. Nudge, can I just get the feedback? Okay, I got that from Charlene. Thank you. Okay, so can the team stay connected to the audio so that they can pick up the questions as they are asked? So Wendy's question is, when is the next call for proposals? What we are faced with at the moment is, given the COVID-19 crisis, we've had a sort of ad hoc approach to distributing emergency aid through most of this year. In fact, when our year started on 1 April 2020, we were stooped into several emergency issues for COVID-19, and that has been the sort of strategy going forward for most of it. We are still deeply responsive to emergency aid and relief and investment. Over the last period, we've worked extensively with people like TB HIV care. We've worked extensively with obviously the Western Cape government on food security and the after school work. So I just want to explain that as a context. We are looking at opening a call for proposals in February next year, which will then probably kick in the 1 April 2021 year. What I always say to our NGO partners is, if there is a need and a particular crisis that you are faced with, mail us. Don't wait for a proposal call. COVID-19 2020 is an unusual year for our operations, and we are faced with, when I say daily, I mean daily requests for funding. People are approaching us that are in crisis. They are approaching us with dire needs, food security issues, COVID-19 testing. We funded significant parts of COVID-19 testing. We've also dealt with education and learner security. So don't necessarily wait for the call, because 2020 is a fairly unusual year for us. And we've made the decision not to act like a traditional donor in this year, which is you'll mail us, we'll tell you, we'll review your proposal. We've had very urgent responses to most of the financial requests that we've received. And I can literally say in some of those cases, it's a 48-hour turnaround. If we have the funding, we've invested it. For example, we invested in getting university students funded with laptops and computers and data, because a lot of the students had to be sent home and had no access. So we helped universities to cope with those kinds of work. We've accommodated the homeless this year at a significant cost to our sort of annual spend on NGOs. So I want to expand on that question by bringing it to a close and say, don't wait for our call for proposal. It will only probably come out in February for the new financial year. If there are funding issues in this year, please mail us. You can mail us to donations@comchest.org.za, donations@comchest.org.za. Send us a proposal, because this year our funding is all ad hoc and emergency. We have a few partners that we fund on a continual basis. And so, those are sort of long-standing funding relationships we have. But if there are NGOs that are struggling and we can help or refer you to aid, mail us at donations@comchest.org.za. Thank you. Are there other questions?
Lorenzo, there's another question. How long are board members allowed to serve, and are there currently any openings?
So board members are allowed to serve a period of 10 years. And then there's that inevitable clause in the Constitution that says, and those periods can be extended by the collective decision of the board. Yes, we have openings on our board. The board meets and they decide who they obviously vote on who joins the board. The most recent people to join our board has been Mr. Daries and Ms. Duncan and Mr. Gunston. But the board is always open. We have at the moment, I think about, let me just count the numbers here because I'm always confused. There are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, I was going to say 10 board members. We can take up to 15 board members. If the board so decides that they wish to expand to the full number. We must have a minimum of 7 and a maximum of 15. We are not compelled to have 15, but the board readily receives applications from members of the public who wish to be board members, and they consider that. At the moment, we are looking for a board member, for a member of the public who is a qualified auditor to join our board. And so I want to put that out there. We do have a vacancy for a qualified auditor who wish to join our board or apply to become a member of the board. If you do wish to recommend people for the board, again, you can mail that directly to me for the board's attention, and you can mail that to ldavids@comchest.org.za, and we will happily consider the nominations for board members. As I said, there is a vacancy at the moment that we are looking for somebody with an audit qualification to join our board. Okay. Thank you very much for being here today and for sharing in our public feedback meeting. It's very unusual and you know, being difficult to gauge and to see where people are at and to hear your voices and see your faces. I'm believing that you are all 65 of you who were there. I'm very happy that you pitched up today to hear us. Our message is one of building a strong third sector, a strong civil society, and making sure that this is not about a few people surviving this crisis or even surviving just living. It is about 57 million people. None of our 57 million people must be left behind. And we will continue to do that work no matter the cost. Community Chest has a firm commitment that it will spend its last to ensure that we are true to the values we stand for. We will not hold back when people are dying, when children are at risk, when kids are subjected to violence. We will not hold back to ensure their safety, their protection, and their advancement. That's the common commitment that we have as a board and as an organization. Oh, I see there's a question from Deborah van der Berg. How will you incorporate transformation and equality on the board? On the board had, when I first joined the organization, we actually had a board transformation committee. It remains an ongoing process at the board to bring on people from all genders, people from all classes, races that serve on the board. That's an ongoing project. We believe in a diverse and transformed board in all the categories of transformation. And we continually look for additional people to strengthen that message of transformation. For the last 2 years, for the last 2 periods, our board has been led by females. And obviously we have a policy that dictates the diversity of the board across all spaces and across all areas of our interest. Again, as I said, you very happy for you to receive, we are very happy to receive nominations that can deepen the transformative nature of our board. Ms. Duncan, do you have a comment that you wish to make?
Yeah, thank you, Lorenzo. I just want to reiterate what Lorenzo said about, you know, we are, if there is anybody who would like to serve on the board of Community Chest, where we have a skills gap, we're constantly looking at that. Please, Lorenzo sent his email address, and with in particular the need for somebody with an audit experience. I think that's something that we have been looking at addressing. But yeah, I think we've covered all the areas. I think that it's been a very informative session, listening to the feedback, again, as a board member myself, but just listening to the passion and to the energy, you know, that we share as a collective, and the fact that we managed to get so many participants online this morning, Lorenzo, and to the rest of the board members and to everybody listening, is an indication that we really have a strong team of people behind Community Chest, always willing to support, always willing to walk the journey with us. And that's something that personally I'm extremely grateful for. I've got nothing else to add. I'm not sure if there are any other questions that anybody else has. If any of the other board members want to say anything, please feel free to do so.
Great. So as we close this meeting, I'm going to ask, are there any board members who would like to comment? If there are no comments from my colleagues on the board, thank you. Then I'm going to close this public feedback meeting of the Community Chest for 2020. And thank you for your participation here today. As I said, if you have any queries on funding, please mail us at donations@comchest.org.za, or if you want to talk about the board, please mail me at ldavids@comchest.org.za, and we'd happily engage with you on any of those particular matters. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here this morning. Have a wonderful day further, and look forward to engaging with you through other means. And hopefully one day, when Zoom is no longer popular, we'll venture and risk seeing each other face to face. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Goodbye.